So I cut off because I need a new device. I'm running out of space. I need to clear up this one too, but I definitely need a new device. I tried a couple of more uploads and I kept getting cut off. And it's because I don't have it's because I don't have space, but when I just got quiet for a second, there's something that I just really need to say. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm a little far away. And if you can't hear me, I'm gonna listen back to it. I'll re-upload it. But where I'm gonna talk about what really needs to be said. What the video last episode cut me off when I discussed the ego. So the last thing I discussed was about being in a time loop. And then I talked about if you're in a time loop, many of us are, that means that you're not really in your higher mind. This is not to insult. I just have to be real with myself. And I have to be honest with myself. You can't be in a time loop and be in your higher mind. Now, most of us have times when we get to have the time to really just relax and get out of the hustle and bustle of the day. Most of us have time to get in our higher mind then. And we do. So we do have moments where we are in our higher mind. Okay? Now, I can say some people who are into spirituality, who that's kind of a full-time thing for them, they'll probably have to be in a higher mind a lot. But then again, a lot of them are not. And the reason why I say a lot of them are not, because when this whole thing hit, especially with the CEO, you know what? I already knew what the deal was with this thing. And it seemed like a lot of these spiritualists didn't really know what was up. And that let me know that they're not really in their higher mind like I thought they were. So they're getting a lot of their answers from a lot of spirits that's probably from lower dimensions. Okay? So even them, you got to be careful with them. They're not necessarily in their higher mind either. And I noticed that they depend on other entities to give them information. And you gotta kind of depend on that other entity, whether that other entity is telling you the truth. But the time loop and the ego. So I was discussing the ego, and I was saying that a lot of people attribute the ego to certain characteristics, right? They attribute the ego to certain characteristics like pride, saving face, not wanting to back down, arrogance, being all materialistic and being all about the bling and stuff like that. What could a lot of the negative characteristics of what would be called an ego. And people reduce the ego to something like that, just to some characteristics, certain characteristics that they don't like, or most people frown upon. That's what they reduce the ego to. But the ego is really everything that you believe that you are in this so-called physical reality, or whatever so-called physical reality you're in. The ego is everything you believe that you are, starting with your name, your birth date, believing that you were actually born, okay? Your social security, everything you learn in school, everything you learn from your parents growing up, your neighborhood, everything that shaped who you are right now is a part of the ego, okay? And that's really you can look at it as some kind of file, a computer file, a database. That all these things shape who you think you are, but it's really your artificial self. It's not your true self. And most people are operating in their lower self. They're the artificial self and not connected to their true self. And so that's the reason why so many people are caught in time loops. Now, I realize the reason why a lot of people are operating in their ego more than anything else is because of responsibilities and what they believe they have to do, because it's hard to get out of that mindset when you're already on a continuum. Like, say you have a job, or say you have a business, or say you have children. You are on a continuum of responsibilities. And so it's not easy just to get out of it. Okay? because you have to break away from being attached to that particular reality. And that takes time, and it's hard to do if you have to keep every day being on a continuum. It's like the soap operas. You're on a continuum of what you had to do the day before. You're constantly on a continuum. And when you're constantly on a continuum, it's hard to break out of ego like that and get more into your true self, because their responsibilities are still there. It's not to say that you ignore everything you got to do, forget your bills, forget everything, and just, I'm not saying that, but most people are very busy through the day, and that's why you have a certain group of folks who, in certain parts of the world, they spend all of their time meditating, or doing other things, chanting, things like that. In certain parts of the world, you see they do their chants or they meditate, they do something like that all day, because responsibilities keep you in your ego, and it keeps you in a time loop. I can probably promise you, most of those people that's chanting and meditating all day, they're probably not stuck in a time loop, because they are not bogged down and weighed down with responsibilities or troubles in the world or a capitalistic system. Because most of us have a lot of responsibilities because of capitalistic system, that if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't do something to get money, you don't eat. And so that has to be your main priority. And that's what keeps people in the ego. And that's what keeps you in the time loop. Unless you are financially to a point where you don't have to worry about stuff, keeping finances going. Most people are in a time loop due to things like that. Okay? And I want to say this. So I'm going to get that out the way. I'm going to get to the most important thing. The movie Us with Jordan Peele. This is what has been going on with me while I've been off of YouTube. Now, I've dealt with people doing some dirty stuff. Yeah, it's a particular people who did some very dirty things, some dark, esoteric things. But like I said, I still realize it's a time loop, and that has already happened before too, right? But now I see where the deepest, darkest aspect, this is where the movie Us by Jordan Peele comes in. A part of myself that was out of my control, if something happened to me as a child, and I still don't know all the details. It tried to come back. So the deepest, darkest aspect of yourself is going to try to come back to you if it's not been dealt with properly. And I'm talking about if that energy is not removed. I'm not talking about just going to get some help and talking to a psychologist. I'm talking about way more than that. That stagnant energy, that energy that's been there from that particular event in your life, it needs to be removed and replaced with something more positive, like love, frequency. It needs to be transmuted. So it has to be even more than removed. So when people say just let go and then do what next? Don't let nobody just tell you to let go. Don't let nobody just tell you to let go. Because when you let go, something needs to replace it. It needs to be transmuted. It needs to be transmuted. Even if you say, this negative thing happened to you, but you put a lot of positive affirmations and energy in the replace of that thing, and you detect that energy, and you put some positivity in the place of that, do something, but don't just let it go. Don't just let somebody tell you to look, because I'm not yelling at you who's listening. I heard somebody say this, and I'm not mad at the person I heard on YouTube say it. It's something that's said a lot. You got to do more than just let it go. It needs to be transmuted. Something else has to be done to replace that energy, whether it's transmuted and it's replaced with something else. But you can't just get rid of it, because it's going to come back. Because your energy is the only energy, your being is the only being that is familiar with. Okay? You are the only one familiar with. Your ego self. Okay, is the only one that it is familiar with. So if you get rid of it, it's just going to come back to you unless you replace it. And it might bring 7 of his friends. Okay? And you're going to be more miserable. So it's best to take the time to replace that energy with something far more positive. But I experienced Us. So the deepest, darkest aspect of, we all have it, the darkest version of ourselves is trying to come and take over. It's trying to come and take over. If you, and I've already saw this, anytime, every store you got to go into, some cities and states are like this and some are not. I get it. But you're in a reality now where you can't go in the store without a face mask on. But then they tell people to get a certain, thing done to them. But then they still got to wear their face mask, even if they got it. Oh, I'm in California, right? So in a lot of areas of California, the businesses tell you, you need to wear a mask, whether VA or un-VA. You need to wear your face mask anyway. What is the point, right? So there's something more sinister going on to tell you to wear a mask everywhere they go. But my point in that is not to get into any theories, because I don't want to delve into getting into that type of stuff anymore, right? The point I'm saying is that that's a great indication that you're being taken deeper into the underworld. That's a great indication that you're being taken deeper into the underworld. Why? Because I mentioned a time loop. But see, like, if you catch up with your future self where you really are supposed to be, it would be bad. So you might want to create the reality you want too. Okay? Because I say, you're getting further and further into time loops. And you're getting further and further into underworlds when that happens. And when you get further and further into underworlds, now you're getting to a point of Jordan Peele. Get out. Because people kept talking about Kanye West and black men being with white women. Kanye West need to get out. No, that's not what Jordan... I mean, I know the black guy in the movie was dating a white woman, and I think Jordan Peele already knew that most people would take it there. But I already thought deeper than that. I thought a lot deeper. It's time to connect and catch up to your true self. And right now, in the time loop, you're behind. You keep lagging behind. And when you lag behind, just in my opinion, I'm not saying this as true, but but everybody has their own truth. The truth, as a person like Delbert Blair used to say, the truth is up to you. So I can't really, it could be my truth because of my experience and the results that I've got from certain things done brought me to what I'm saying right now. But it's my truth. It don't necessarily have to be the people who listening, because everybody's in their own reality, right? Everybody's in their own reality. But when you get further and further into time loops, then you get further and further into underworlds. And from what I've seen, I took a trip during my ordeal, and while I was gone. I'm gonna tell you something, because some really bad stuff was done. But I'm gonna tell you what I saw. I not only went through hell, I went to hell. And when the hell that's being created, like a reality that has been created, not just in my mind, but it's a collective of beliefs that created these realities, right? It's like an astral world. And so I have seen, if you ever seen the video Thriller by Michael Jackson, it's people that really look like that. And this was, I guess I would call it the first dimension. I don't know. I would call it that, because I've been in the second dimension a long time. Because of stuff that happened to me as a child, it was some real bad stuff that my family did, and that caused me to really see the second dimension. It's dark all the time, but it doesn't, like somebody described it as violence all the time. Well, that's not my experience, because I've been there. See, when you go and you're there a lot, then you know that's not necessarily always the truth. That could be something they saw. But like I say, everybody's in their own reality. What somebody else say happened don't mean that's what you're going to necessarily see, because you're in your own reality. Okay? But So yeah, but the second, yes, it's always dark from my experience too, but it does not have to be always violent. The cars look a little older, but there are cars. It's still like a physical world, right? So you can take a trip through there and you might not feel like you're stuck to a physical rule set, right? But if you're in people who are in the second dimension, they're fixed to that. They're still fixed to the physical rule set, like we are in a so-called third dimension, which, we got to talk about. We'll get to that later. And so they're all stuck to physical rule sets. I've seen the first, what's called the first, and then I might have seen the minus. And I saw a dimension where I've seen the lady driving a car, and I've seen so-called black people, so-called white people. They don't have eyes. They don't have lids. So what you see is big holes in their face where their eyes are supposed to be. Look like demons. But they're just not necessarily demons. You call them demons because they're from lower dimension, but like I said, they're not really hurting anybody. That's what they look like. Where the eyes are supposed to be and where the lids of their eyes are supposed to be. Like, think about somebody who don't have eyes. You still see the lids covering that hollow space, right? Well, in that area, in that particular part of the astral world, they didn't have the lids and they didn't have the eyes, so you just saw big hollows. Okay? And you didn't see the nose either. And so I've been there. And then I saw the Michael Jackson looking entities. I've been to that world. Like I said, I went to hell. I went to hell. And them vampire looking eyes, them real those eyes, they look like vampires that you've seen in the movies. I had my eyes closed. One time it was I'll say maybe a couple of months ago. I had my eyes closed. Just kind of sleeping. You know how you're in between sleep and awake and stuff like that? And so I was looking into a car because I was dealing with some deep dark stuff that was done. And I saw these particular entities for real. They look like people. Black or white, but I saw black. And they had those eyes. Think about the vampire eye. Those real light-looking eyes that people like to wear for Halloween. They look like, how can I describe it? They real light. They almost look white. They look almost scary, and people wear them a lot for Halloween. There's really people like that, and they're vampires. And I saw this. And the reason I saw it is because I was taken to that dimension because of something that happened. Okay? Because of something that happened, I was taken to that dimension. And I saw it during the meditation. I'm going to say this. Where you think you are, like in a so-called physical world. Like your eyes might be open. When you think you are awake, you are asleep. And when you are asleep, you're really awake. So when you close your eyes and you're seeing these crazy things, be on the alert, because that is probably where you've been taken to. And I'm aware of that. So as I'm talking, my eyes are wide open, but this is not where I really am, because our physical bodies, you'll eventually get to the point where some people say it's a holographic world, and there's a strong belief that we're in a virtual reality. That's where they can put you in time loops because of a virtual reality. Okay? And that's why they're able to use these machines and put you in time loops and mess with your consciousness like that. So it could have been scary, but now I'm at the point where it's like, just what you gonna do about it? Now you see the fact that you can be alert and be aware and alert means that, you're being told something. And I'm gonna end this before my phone cut off. Now, Getting back to Jordan Peele, Us. The deepest, darkest aspect of yourself is ready to take over. Like what happened to Us. But that is just my own interpretation of it because of a personal experience. The deepest, darkest aspect of yourself is trying to take you out. Some people, not everybody, but at the same time, just because it's not happening to certain people right now doesn't mean it hasn't happened before, and it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. We don't know the time frame that things happen to different people. So that's why I'm saying this. The deepest, darkest aspect of yourself is ready to take over, and it's going to fight you. It's going to fight you, and it could fight you in the form of bringing other people to your life to wreak havoc in your life. Things like doing dark things to you. And when I say dark, you know what I mean, because I know dark is not necessarily bad, but I'm talking about the way it's used to describe a certain type of behavior. And so this is why at this particular time it's so important more than any other time in the world to deal with your dark past. Don't just let it go. Like, think about a person, right? They thought they let their past go because it hasn't come back up in 20 years, right? And now here we go, 2022, right? Why does all of a sudden come up? Something happened in their life that caused all that deep, dark stuff to come up again. Why? They haven't even thought about it in 20 years. I see people make YouTube videos all the time about what they were able to accomplish. Well, yeah, I've been through this, but I still made it through, and I still pushed through, and I still did this and this. Well, you know what? Those people are bragging on what they were able to obtain in the material world. They are bragging on the fact they were able to let those things go enough to attain what they attained in the material world. But let me tell you something. That energy and those people are still there if it has not been transmuted or something. And what's going to happen? And it might be overwhelming because they have not dealt with it in so long, because they thought it's gone, because they went on with their life, it hasn't come back up, and they feel like it's gone. Something's going to happen at the very last hour that's going to happen to them, and it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks. And it's going to be so overwhelming, they won't have the time to deal with it properly. And that dark self, that dark version of them is going to overtake them. Like Us. So I'm saying right now, deal with your fears. Whatever problem you are dealing with the most right now is the fear, the area of fear, whatever problem that is. You don't have to act like you're perfect. I know people, that's that's another attribute of the ego, because society expects us not to have problems. But the problem is society has problems itself. So who is it to tell you not to have problems, right? Whatever you're dealing with the most right now that don't seem to want to go away is the biggest thing that might need to be addressed. And it might need to get to the root cause of it, because whatever you're dealing with might not be the main thing. There's a root cause to cause it to go into this effect like that. There's a root cause. Get to the root cause. Deal with that energy, because it's energy, or whatever you want to call it. Whatever the computer file, the data, whatever bit has been implanted, however you want to use that, it needs to be replaced with something. Because if not, this is a time right now. They're ready to take people back into further time loops. And this is a time to deal with that, because the deepest, darkest part of yourself is going to try to take over, and it's going to try to kill you. What do I mean by kill? I don't mean physical death. I mean it's going to permanently separate you from your true beingness. That deepest, darkest aspect of yourself is coming back like a vengeance, and it's going to permanently separate you from your true self. And that's what I feel like that Us is about, because that has been my experience. That doesn't mean it's the truth. It's just my experience. But I don't want to keep going on and on because I don't want this thing to stop me while I'm talking. And I will talk to you later. All right.